What's up, you guys? It's your girl, Gemma Jade. Welcome back, and if you're new here, just welcome. Today we're going to talk about another case, and if you've seen my other videos, I watched so much Dateline and Disappeared. Some of the cases just really stick with me, and a few of them have stuck with me throughout the years. I've already covered Joey Lynn Offit, Clinton Nelson, and this is the case of Lauren Dunne-Astley, or sometimes she's referred to as just Lauren Astley. The name of the special was Loved to Death, and it's about something called dating and breakup violence. And it happens to everyone, but this one specifically is about teenagers. So let's just dive right in. Sit back and relax. Lauren Astley was born on April 1st, 1993, so April Fool's Day, and she is an Aries. Finally, a break from all you Leos. Her parents are Mary Dunn and Malcolm Astley, and she was born in Boston, Massachusetts. She was an only child and the absolute love of her parents' lives. She grew up in Wayland, Massachusetts. Her parents were both educators, and in 2006 they divorced, but they shared custody of her. They co-parented really well. Again, she was just the love of their lives. Lauren discovered a love and that she had a talent for music and performing at a very early age. At the age of 12, she got the lead in a community theater production of Annie. She was a natural. She did not shy away from the spotlight. She only stood 5 feet tall, but by all accounts, she had this giant personality. One of her friends actually described her as sparkly, and I remember that. I remember just absolutely loving that description and being like, I wish someone would describe me as sparkly, you know? She was very talented at soccer and tennis. She played the French horn, and she performed with the Metro West New Symphony Orchestra for several years. She had an incredible singing voice that her father said was just getting stronger and stronger as she got older. She was the lead singer in her high school's a cappella group, and she got the lead for the song Breathless, which you can find. I'll try to link it if I can figure out how, right on YouTube. She really did have an amazing voice, and she was a beautiful, beautiful girl, both inside and out. I look at a picture of her and I can't help but smile. Her loved ones described Lauren as vibrant and full of life, an incredibly honest young woman with a huge heart who wasn't afraid to stand up for what she believed in and she was willing to go the extra mile to help someone out, for friends in need. She was a really giving person as well. Just an amazing young woman by all accounts. Lauren went 3 times to New Orleans to help the victims of the devastation of Hurricane Katrina. She absolutely loved it. She loved the work. She was so proud of it. And her parents stated that the good, hard manual labor was really good for her, but also really meaningful to her. Lauren eventually started dating a fellow classmate and her first real boyfriend in high school, and his name is Nathaniel Fujita, or sometimes called Nate. In this video, I'll be going back and forth. They each were each other's first serious relationship, and they had a bunch of mutual friends. Like Lauren's best friends and his best friends all became kind of a group of friends, and their friends described Nathaniel as really quiet. He didn't say much, and he was, quote, a good person, and he was very kind at heart, end quote. Nathaniel was the star receiver for the Wayland High School football team and the oldest child of his parents, Beth and Tomo Fujita. I couldn't find what Beth did for a living. I think she may have been a homemaker, but don't quote me on that and don't come for me if I'm wrong, because I couldn't find it. Tomo, on the other hand, is a musician. You can find his music right here on YouTube. He was also a professor at the Berklee College of Music in Boston, Massachusetts. The families became really close while Lauren and Nathaniel were dating. Each family thought the other kid was a good fit and a good match for the other kid. So Lauren's family really loved Nate and thought it was a great fit at first, and Nathaniel's family just absolutely adored Lauren. They said she became part of their family. She was there all of the time. They spent a lot of time together, and they mostly hung out with each other at Nathaniel's house. The two dated for 3 years, with the first 2 years of the relationship being described as seemingly ideal. The third and final year, though, became a roller coaster ride. I couldn't find specific information or details as to what changed in that last year, but Lauren would complain to her friends one night that Nate was being boring and she was so over it, and on his phone the entire time that they were hanging out. And the next night, she would gush about how cute and how sweet she is and how much she loved him. Lauren's mother explained in an interview that she noticed that Lauren and Nate were chronically getting into fights. They would break up and get back together over and over and over again in that third year. In the spring of senior year, on her 18th birthday in April, Lauren finally called it quits with Nate for the final time. She had had enough. She was looking forward to college and meeting new people, and she wanted to stay friendly with him, but she had just had enough and she ended the relationship for good. According to friends and family, she was very relieved with the breakup. Nathaniel, however, did not see the breakup in the same light. He was extremely sad. He fell into a terrible depression. He saw it as a great loss when Lauren broke up with him, and he just couldn't seem to move past it or really even accept that it was real. He couldn't seem to accept that they were actually broken up for good this time and they were not getting back together. Nathaniel's uncle said that he knew something was really wrong with Nathaniel because he wasn't even getting excited or animated about a childhood dream come true, which was he was going to be playing football for Trinity College come fall. He didn't even seem to care about that anymore. His uncle said, quote, "He just wasn't the same kid. I mean, not to get excited about football," end quote. To celebrate graduation, Lauren and two of her best friends, Chloe and Hannah, decided to throw a huge party for graduation. About 150 classmates showed up, and Nathaniel was one of them. They were all having a great time, dancing and just having fun, celebrating finally graduating high school. You know, that's such an exciting time. They rented this huge tent, and they all just had a blast. However, I guess because of the harassment and anger Nate had been showing and displaying towards Lauren in the months from when she broke up with him until this graduation party, Lauren decided she didn't want to talk to Nate at the party. She was just like I had said previously, she was just done with it. She was over the entire thing. She was ready to move on with her life. And if he couldn't be friendly towards her, then that was kind of his problem. She still cared about him. She still worried about him. She talked to her friends about how worried she was. But with the way he was treating her, she didn't want to deal with it anymore. And that's one of the reasons that they broke up, that she broke up with him, because she was really tired of the arguing all the time. People at the party who were interviewed said that Nathaniel went up to Lauren at the party and started this huge fight. He was apparently drunk. They recalled how upset Lauren got and how she was just pleading with Nathaniel to just leave her alone, to just stop harassing her, to just get away from her. Lauren's mother also recalled a memory from that night that Lauren came to her crying, and she was like, "Mom, he won't let me dance with anybody. He's harassing me. Like, he's driving me nuts." Lauren was in actual tears over this. Because Lauren kept telling Nate to get away from her and that he was harassing her, to just please leave her alone, she was getting extremely frustrated. Nate, in a fit of anger, and I guess with the alcohol and possibly marijuana that he was smoking, he decided to go over to one of the poles of the tent and punch it, making part of it collapse onto the other people at the party that were standing underneath it. At this point, Nathaniel was asked by Lauren's parents to please leave. Lauren's father stated, quote, "He had to be picked up, and I think feeling like the world was against him at that time," end quote. In the weeks leading up to Lauren's murder, everyone noticed a huge change in Nate. He never wanted to leave his house anymore, and he was drinking and smoking pot daily. He wasn't hanging out with any of his friends anymore. His mother, Beth, was so worried about him that she made him see a psychiatrist. Lauren continued to worry about Nate because obviously she saw all of this going on. They still went to the same school. They had the same friends. She would ask friends repeatedly if they thought that she should maybe do something, say something to him, try to talk to him, go and see him. She still cared about him. She didn't want to see him hurt, especially she didn't want to be the cause of his pain. You know how it is with your first love. You know, when things end, it's hard for them to really end. And that's why a lot of teenage relationships do that, you know, roller coaster ride. I mean, we do it as adults, right? So she was really concerned and she wanted to do something, but her friends advised her against it, figuring he would just kind of get over it if she really showed him that it was over. Her going back to him may give him some idea that she was actually going back to him to be a part of the relationship again. He might take it the wrong way, essentially. Also, I'm sure because of the anger he displayed at the graduation party, her friends and family were concerned if she went near him, what might happen. Would he be drunk or high and rage again at her? However, when Beth came into Lauren's job at a clothing store in the mall and pleaded with Lauren to please speak to Nate, to go and see him, and to try to talk to him because Beth was so worried. Remember, Beth was like a second mother to Lauren. Nate's family was like her second family. She absolutely couldn't refuse. She agreed to go and see him and talk to him. And that's exactly what she did after her shift on the night of July 3rd, 2011. There's video surveillance of Lauren leaving her job that night after she completed her shift at the clothing store, and she was talking on the phone. It was later found out that she was speaking to Nathaniel on the phone at this time. She left work at around 6:45 p.m. She didn't tell anyone of her plans to go and see Nathaniel. I guess Beth knew about it because obviously Beth had asked her, but other than that, like, she didn't tell her friends, she didn't tell her mom, her family, or anything like that. This surveillance footage of her leaving work that day is the last anyone would ever see Lauren alive again. At 7:05 p.m. on the night of July 3rd, 2011, Lauren's phone sent her very last text message. It was sent to Nathaniel Fujita and contained one word, quote, "Here," end quote. At about dawn on July 4th, 2011, Lauren had already been missing for about 12 hours at that point. Everyone knew she was missing, and her family finally called the police. I don't know how they found out she was missing or what happened in those 12 hours, but it was overnight, so who knows what they were thinking. But around 12 hours later, that morning on July 4th, they did call the police right at about daybreak. Lauren's body was found in a nearby marsh. She had been strangled and her throat had been slit. She had a bungee cord tangled in her hair as well. Malcolm Astley had to do the unthinkable. He had to go down to the coroner's office and identify the body of his only child, his daughter, his sweetheart, who had her whole life ahead of her, the love of his life. I can't even imagine what that must have been like for him. He later said, quote, "I was hoping up until the last moment that it was not her, even when we went to the medical examiner's office," end quote. Lauren's mother remembers when the police told her the news, screaming at the top of her lungs, quote, "Please don't let it be Nate," end quote. Investigators interviewed family and friends, and obviously they wanted to speak to her ex-boyfriend, Nathaniel Fujita. They learned that on the previous night, Nate was home alone when Lauren had went to visit and speak with him to see if he was okay. They went to the Fujita home, and Tomo Fujita, Nate's father, answered the door and informed the investigators that his son wasn't home. He hadn't seen him in hours, and Nathaniel was essentially nowhere to be found. Nobody knew where he was. Investigators immediately got a warrant to search the Fujita home. They started their search of the residence in the garage, where they saw a stain that looked like and later tested positive for human blood. They also discovered additional blood evidence, bungee cords, and in the basement of the home, a black gym bag. Inside the gym bag was a soaking wet pair of sneakers that were covered in mud. When they searched Nathaniel's bedroom, that's when it all came together. In a crawl space in his bedroom, the police discovered shoes, sneakers that appeared to be covered in blood, that were covered in mud as well. Remember, her body was found in a marsh. They found clothing that appeared to also be covered in blood. Everything was soaking wet, covered in mud, and apparently covered in blood inside of this bag in the crawl space in Nathaniel's room. This is when they decided they were issuing a warrant for the arrest of Nathaniel Fujita. They ended up tracking him down at a cousin's house, and when they told him what they were there for and why, and when they put the handcuffs on him, Nathaniel was completely silent. He didn't say anything. It was now the early morning hours of July 5th, 2011, and Nathaniel Fujita was charged with the murder of Lauren Dunne-Astley. About the arrest, Nathaniel's uncle said, quote, "It was incomprehensible. It was like an alternate reality," end quote. Here is the timeline the prosecution put together based on all of the evidence they had found. Nathaniel was home alone when Lauren showed up a few minutes after 7 p.m. on July 3rd. That's when she sent that text message that said "here" because she was out front of his house, obviously. He savagely and brutally murdered her in his parents' garage. Then he drove her red Jeep about a quarter of a mile to the town beach parking lot, dumped her keys in a storm drain, and then ran on foot back to his house. When he got home, he went back into the garage, grabbed Lauren's lifeless body, put it in his car, and drove only about 5 miles to a secluded marsh area. He took her body out of the car and went only about 30 feet into the water. He tried to conceal her body in the thick vegetation that was in the water of this marsh. Then he headed back home. A witness saw Nathaniel that day driving back from the marsh after he had dumped Lauren's body, and the witness stated, quote, "His music was blaring and his shirt was off. He looked like he was a man on a mission, deliberate and purposeful driving home," end quote. When he got back home, he tried to clean the crime scene and hide the evidence. Quote, "It all took less than an hour," end quote, prosecutors said. The prosecution in this case sums up a very simple theory as to why Nate killed Lauren. Quote, "He was upset his girlfriend broke up with him, so he killed her," end quote. By all accounts, there was no physical abuse or stalking behavior going on at all during the couple's 3-year relationship. However, some of their mutual friends did say they saw some warning signs that they considered a little bit troubling, a little bit weird, but as teenagers, I don't know, you don't think that there's going to be a murder, right? They said Nate never wanted Lauren talking to or spending too much time with anyone else, especially boys. He would take her phone, he would look through her phone, he would start arguments with her if she talked to somebody that Nathaniel didn't think she should be talking to. Lauren's best friend Chloe later said, quote, "I believe he loved her, but he was obsessed with her," end quote. As authorities started gathering more information after Lauren's death and leading up to the trial, they believed that Lauren was the victim of something called, quote, dating violence, end quote. Dating violence or breakup violence is a disturbing trend that's happening more and more often in the breakup of relationships between teenagers and younger people, young adults. The prosecution said, quote, "A relationship ends and what happens is a surge of uncontrollable anger. It can be verbal and or physical, and in the case of Lauren Astley, it can end in death," end quote. According to the American Psychology Association, 1 in 3 young adults and teens are the victims of physical, emotional, and or verbal and or sexual abuse by a dating partner. Of teenagers that are in an abusive relationship, 3% will tell an authority figure, 6% will tell a family member, but 75% will tell a friend. Mary Dunn explained that while now she realizes that she did see some signs of a toxic relationship, they weren't blaring. They were, quote, "very, very soft," end quote. She stated that she just kind of chalked it up to teenage behavior. The things now in retrospect that caused her some concern were the fact that Lauren's best friends didn't like him and the fact that they always spent so much time at Nathaniel's house compared to at Lauren's house. Her mother stated, quote, "And the number of times that she tried to break up with him and he wouldn't allow it, I think that is another red flag," end quote. According to Nate's family, there was something really real and really severe going on with him mentally and internally. He had reported to his psychiatrist that his feeling was a 1 when asked to state how he felt, with a 1 out of 10, 1 being the worst you could possibly feel and 10 being the best. Let's talk a bit about the trial. On February 13th, 2013, a year and a half after the murder, Nathaniel Fujita stood trial for the murder of Lauren Astley. The prosecution believed that the event with Nathaniel punching the pole of the event tent at the graduation party was actually a precursor of what was to come in the following months. Quote, "This is a domestic violence murder. This was perpetrated because of the relationship, which was a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship," end quote, the prosecution stated in court. However, the defense disagreed with that statement. They did not believe this was a cut-and-dry domestic violence murder. They wanted the jury to focus on Nathaniel's behavior after the breakup, leading up to graduation, and leading up to Lauren's murder. The psychiatrist that Beth Fujita took her son to see diagnosed him with major clinical depression, but Nathaniel refused to take any of the medication. His attorney stated that he had, quote, "major mental illness, and this isn't just feeling down, but this was a major depressive episode," end quote, stated Nathaniel Fujita's attorney. Lauren's best friend Chloe said that Lauren was worried that Nate was going to hurt himself, but nobody ever imagined that Nathaniel was going to ever hurt Lauren. Nathaniel's attorney says, quote, "At the time of the killing, Nathaniel lapsed into a temporary psychotic episode that prevented him from controlling his action or comprehending what he was doing," end quote. The defense is that Nathaniel was not criminally responsible at the time of the murder because of mental illness. So essentially, it's the insanity defense. Quote, the defense I would ask you to consider is one of lack of criminal responsibility, end quote, they stated to the jury. Nathaniel Fujita's attorney, Bill Silverman, called an expert witness for the defense. This witness was named Wade Myers. He was an expert psychiatrist who had evaluated Nate while he was in jail waiting for trial after Lauren's murder. When asked what Nathaniel told him allegedly had happened when Lauren arrived at the house, Wade recounted that Nathaniel told him that they had begun walking towards the garage to talk, and he had grabbed the bungee cord and put it around her neck and began strangling her. He said he wasn't controlling himself, but that his body was acting while his mind kind of sat off and looked. He felt a total disconnect and disconnection from the actual murder itself. And his parents and his family say that to this day, they still don't really think he understands why it happened or what really happened. Dr. Myers also testified about exactly what Nathaniel had told him allegedly happened about slitting Lauren's throat. He responded with, quote, again, describing not in control of what he was doing, no emotional connection to what was happening, end quote. So you get the picture of what the defense was saying and what the prosecution was trying to say as well, of what happened and why it happened, how it happened, and was Nathaniel Fujita criminally responsible for this crime. I want to focus on one moment that happened during the trial, and it was when Nathaniel Fujita was found guilty of premeditated murder of Lauren Astley, first degree. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, with deliberate premeditation and extreme atrocity or cruelty. After that verdict was read, immediately after, Lauren Astley's father, Malcolm Astley, got up, walked across the courtroom, and hugged Nathaniel Fujita's parents. And he didn't just hug them, he cried with them and said he was so sorry for them. What an act of grace, and just that's like the ultimate decency of a human being, that forgiveness. I can't even imagine. Just the word that fills my mind when I hear that is grace. What a graceful, beautiful, wonderful, kind-hearted soul, kind-hearted human being. This man that lost his daughter was able to share grief and give compassion to and feel bad for and feel for the parents of the guy who murdered his daughter. He later said, quote, trying to hold people responsible for situations that are murky and we don't understand very well, and trying to sort out the matter of mental health and how it applies in this case, end quote. When asked about the hug, he said, quote, I was mainly sharing grief and wishing comfort for them and the ongoing horror that they face. They are facing ongoing equivalent to torture for their son for the rest of his life, end quote. In response, Nate's uncle said of this amazing gesture of grace and compassion from a grieving father, quote, he is perhaps the most generous human being I have ever met, end quote, as tears streamed down his face as he recalled that moment. So that's it. Lauren's parents went on to create the Lauren Dunne-Astley Memorial Fund, and you can find out about that by looking online. This case really hit me because if you saw my personal story called My Abuser Got Full Custody of My Kids, or the courts gave my abuser full custody, I went through this in high school. I went through extreme dating violence, breakup violence. I'm lucky I got out of it with my life, because that last day before I left my abuser, when he had his hands around my throat, he said, today I'm going to kill you, bitch. Not to make everything personally having to do with me, but I think that's why this case really stuck with me. I can't even imagine the terror and horror and fear that Lauren felt. This was her first love. She was 18 years old. Her mother is really upset. She said Nathaniel never even said he was sorry. He never really said why he did it. He kind of just this mental illness. He never spoke at all about it. He never said anything, not even in court. And she wants to know why. She said she wants to know, was Lauren asking for her? Was Lauren screaming for her in her final moments? And I can't even imagine having to live with that every single day. If you or someone you love is a victim of domestic violence, please get help. Tell somebody. There are so many resources out there if you just find them. And whatever you do, never ever meet your ex alone. Not for any reason. Or at the very least, let someone know that when you're going, where you're going, why you're going, and for how long you're going to be there, when they should expect you to be done. Guys, I'm Gemma Jade. I'm so happy you watched this video. I hope you made it all the way through. I hope I did this case justice, just like I try in all of my others, because these are real people, real victims, real families. And again, please be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. It means the absolute world to me. I love telling these stories. Just know, if you do subscribe, this is a true crime case, which I cover at least once a week, and I try for twice. My channel, however, is Hot Mess Recovery with Gemma Jade. I am a recovering addict, and another passion of mine and something that's in my heart is to help other recovering addicts, other addicts in active addiction, and the families of both. So please just be aware of that. If you subscribe, that you will probably also be getting notifications for my other videos, which, I mean, I go by facts, guys, facts and evidence. Please stay subscribed. Give me a break. I'm brand new to this. I'm updating my equipment very soon. And for my subscribers, be ready for, I'm pretty sure I'm going to start it in November, Throwback Thursday, where every Thursday I'm going to post a case that took place long ago, anywhere before the year 2000. And I'm hoping to go back even to the 18, maybe even the 1700s. I don't know how far back documentation goes. Guys, be kind to each other. It costs nothing and can gain you so much. I say it all the time. It's easy to put into practice when you try. Have your best day. I love you so much. Thank you so much for all of your support. Please be sure to let me know what you think about this case in the comments. I was a little iffy with the life imprisonment with no possibility of parole kind of verdict, because does he have mental illness? There's just not enough information. I feel that for a kid of his standing, you know, a good kid essentially until all of this happened, maybe there was something going on there. And if he was majorly clinically depressed, you know, his psychiatrist diagnosed him with that, I mean, I guess he would still be culpable because he refused his medication. What do you guys think? It's very murky, like Lauren's father said. It's very murky trying to figure out mental illness or not, or, you know, would he have done this if he didn't have the major clinical depression? Was it just rage? Did he do it purposely? Did he know what he was doing? Let me know what you think. Have your best day, and I'll see you Saturday at the latest. Bye, guys.